Nice to meet you.
You as
um,
well?
Sweet. Well, I'm really excited to be here. This is my third year at BVC, and in the past couple of years, I've been volunteering. So it's really cool to be up here on stage, and it's really awesome to be up here on stage with another student entrepreneur. So it's really awesome to hear about what you're doing with Farmlink, and yeah, I'm excited to get to know more about it.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, so I guess to start, I guess I'm just curious, what was the inspiration, like the initial inspiration behind FarmLink, and like what brought you from like the idea of of seeing this gap between farmers having wasted food and then bringing that to food banks and then actually starting this.
Yeah, I mean, it was actually quite simple. I got sent home from school in March, like many other students or most other students across the US, sitting around reading articles about everything that was happening in the world. And one of the things we kept seeing was articles about food being dumped due to supply chain breakdowns, meaning like the farms that were supplying Brown University all their food. They had those contracts canceled in March, which meant the perishable goods had to be dumped into the ground. At the same time, I was talking to my local food bank that I volunteered at growing up, and we knew that they were telling me that they had gone from 300 families a week to like 1,500 families a week, and were burning through their food supply. So those felt like two problems that could solve each other. And the initial goal was just trying to reach out to farmers locally, farmers in and around California, where I'm from, and connect them to this food bank in Los Angeles.
Awesome. So you started locally. Are you how far have you expanded? Are you still just local?
No, we've worked now in 40 states,
Okay.
and
Wow.
we're pushing to get to all 50.
Awesome. That's really inspiring. Yeah, could you talk more about how how you scaled it, kind of like who is helping you execute, in all 40 states? It sounds like you're working with a lot of college students all around. Um, but yeah, how did you begin to scale that, I guess, and what does that look like now? That,
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, it was just, it was myself and James Knopf, the other co-founder, and a couple other friends that we roped in with us. Basically, driving trucks, we'd go rent a truck at Penske whenever we get a farm that would pick up the phone and said, hey, yeah, we had surplus. We'd go rent a truck from Penske. We'd drive to the farm ourselves, load up the truck, and then drive to the food bank and unload it ourselves. That was unsustainable and probably illegal. I don't know. I mean, it was me driving like a 26-foot box truck on the 405 freeway with like 40,000 eggs in the back. But it was the only thing we could do because we had no other way to be able to move those quantities of food. We started posting what we were doing on just Instagram and things like that, Facebook, Snapchat, and suddenly kids and friends started reaching out saying, "Hey, I, am home from school. I don't have classes, or I had an internship or a job that I've been furloughed from, or it's canceled. Can I help you guys? Like, this seems really cool." Suddenly, we had this just immense outpouring of support from not just friends and family in California, but suddenly from all around the US, people reaching out and saying, how can I help? How can I help? I have a pickup truck. Can I help you guys? I have a vegetable garden in my backyard. It got to the point where now we have, 150 to 200 full-time volunteers at the organization. And as mentioned, the average age of that is of the volunteers is 21, which I think is something that's really awesome. It's very much a student-led group.
awesome. Yeah, it's really. Would you say most of your did you say would you say most of your volunteers are college students, or do you
Well,
have?
at the beginning, yes. Now, absolutely not. We have students still, graduates. Now we're lucky enough to have people who have worked in the space and said, hey, I love what you guys are doing. I have 8 extra hours a week that I can give give you my expertise on design or marketing or agriculture, supply chain, whatever it may be. So we're really lucky to have people that we can learn from now. Um, People much older than us and who have much more experience than we do.
Very cool. Yeah, I guess that's another one of my questions is, I mean, in starting my own business, I found it very like difficult to figure out where to start. And one of the things that's really helped me is just like all of the people that have stepped in to kind of mentor me along the way. Have you found like through this process, like not only have you found volunteers, but have you found like people who really have stepped in to like mentor you um, through this process?
Absolutely. I mean, it was mentioned that I studied political science, and the other co-founder studies computer science at Stanford. And so basically meaning we neither of us had any background in agriculture, freight, supply chain, nothing. I mean, we had volunteered at food banks when we were younger together, but that was it. So what that meant was we came in with a humility, and we still have that in the sense of we basically are like we know nothing, and we want to learn everything. So, like with that attitude, I mean, from the beginning, what we were doing was just calling people and saying, "Hey, do you have 30 minutes time that we could just learn what your issues are, um, and basically tell us how we can help?" And we're still doing that to this day. And in doing so, we've built relationships with people that from all around the country and actually all around the world now, who just an incredible outpouring of support. People who are now, we have weekly meetings with who don't need to give us our time but do, and that's everything to us, really.
Awesome. What would you say that you like? What would you say you've enjoyed most about this process?
Yeah. Um, I can say like I'll harp like again and again on the team. I think I've already mentioned it like 4 or 5 times at this point, but I can't say it enough. Um, Nobody in this project is getting paid. It's all volunteer work. But at the same time, it's not just a couple hours here and there. It's 8 to 10 hours, sometimes more a day. So the fact that we've had people come and choose to do this instead of a job where they could be making a big paycheck because they said it means so much more to them, uh, is by far the most special, one of the most special parts of this project. I've got to meet a lot of really, really inspired, smart people. And the only reason that we've been able to move so much food across the US in this period of time is because we're lucky enough to have so many people who are smarter than we are.
Awesome. Yeah. I awesome. That's that's really great to hear. Um, what would you say are some barriers, I guess, that you've faced along the process as well? It sounds like you've done pretty well from. Yeah, I mean, it now seems like it's really put together, and you're operating in a lot of states. But yeah, what are some barriers that you've encountered?
I'm glad it seems that way. We have a lot of barriers. We've had a lot, and we're still having a lot, but it's a lot of fun. I mean, the first, as I said, was freight. We had like a farmer would tell, these farmers were dealing with huge amounts of produce. I got on the phone with a farmer named Doug Hess in Ashland, Idaho. And, we were what we do is we basically just cold call the farmers and cold call farmers from region to region and say, "Hey, do you have surplus produce? Are you dumping produce?" And I did this and got on the phone with Doug Hess, and he said, "Yeah, I have a mountain of about 3 million pounds of potatoes in a shed in my backyard." And so when you're dealing with those kind of quantities, like we had no idea how to move it. And like I said, we were originally just renting the trucks and trying to load it in ourselves, but it became unsustainable. We threw a total shot in the dark around May and reached out to Uber Freight, which is the startup freight company within Uber, and said, "Hey, can we have some free freight? Like, this is who we are. This is what we do." And they said, "We don't even know who you guys are, but sure, you can have 2 trucks a week." And that was huge for us. And then we did that, and we showed them what we did with them and where we move food. And then they bumped it up to 3 trucks a week and 4 trucks a week. Now they're our main partner, providing us free freight to move food around the U.S. So that was like the biggest first hurdle that we had to cross. And it was like major thanks to Uber Freight. They're still our partner. The next one was probably just organization. I mean, like I said, it's a really low barrier to entry. We want to take everyone who wants to help. That's like the only thing we require is just a passion and interest in help. Grew this like massive team, and it was important to us to figure out how to be able to utilize everyone to the best of their ability and talent that they do bring in. My friend Stella, who basically created the whole org organization structure did an amazing job in doing so. So that if you come to Farmlink, although it's 200 people, you get to work in these like small little creative groups where things happen and there's no bureaucracy. So that's awesome. And then the last bit is probably once we got to a point where we could move food around the US, we started to run into barriers with the existing organizations in place. We have a ton of respect for the food distribution organizations that have been here way before, way longer than we have. We're learning from them. We respect them and admire them. In some cases, though, it is difficult to come in and be able to provide food or disrupt the system or improve a system that needs more food, which many do now. So we trying to squeeze our way in there as the new guy was difficult and still is difficult. So we have a bit of a chip on our shoulder in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I have a couple comments on that. I feel like I feel like a lot of people just are not aware of all of that waste that just that farmers have that doesn't go anywhere, and I guess it seems like farmers just don't have the resources, to transport it. How did you first figure out really about this problem? You said you maybe read an article in one of your classes. Did you have any connection to this before you, like this year? Is it something new, something you've been interested in for a while, or?
No, like, I was aware that there was food waste in the United States and across the world. I knew that was an issue. In March, when we came home, I was reading a New York Times article specifically. The title was like plowing produce, smashing eggs, dumping milk. And it was about, like I mentioned, the supply chain breakdown and how that was leading farmers to dump fresh, edible, good food, basically. And that is what, that's what initially kind of made our interest click, just the absurdity of that. I think everybody who looked at those articles was like, that's crazy, that shouldn't happen. But it wasn't until we actually got more involved, I would say, by the time we really starting running as an operation, like May, that we realized that this issue is absolutely not something that was created by COVID. It was exacerbated and brought to the forefront of attention by the pandemic. But this is a much, much larger systemic issue that has existed before and will continue to exist after the pandemic. And what's actually really incredible now, though, is there's a lot of movement in the space to fix that and make sure that that doesn't have to happen. It's one of the silver linings of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like the problem is like when you were aware of this problem when you first started? Do you feel like it's more prevalent? Like it's more prevalent than you thought it was?
So much more.
Yeah.
I thought it was millions of. I mean, when I read millions of pounds of food being dumped, that was an inconceivable number. I mean, but we're talking in the United States alone, ballpark, tens of billions, 100 billion pounds a year. On farm alone, 20 billion pounds of food a year. So that's a number that is, inconceivable, as I said, but it happens every year, day in and day out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't even believe that. It's crazy. I must say, I think your Farmlink is just like, I'm really fascinated with this entrepreneurial ideas and entrepreneurial energy, and I think like Farmlink is definitely the definition of an entrepreneurial venture, just where you see this huge problem and then kind of go to fix it. So it's really cool to hear you guys are doing. What would you say? Like, do you have a vision for Farmlink beyond COVID? So it sounds like obviously the problem goes beyond COVID, but I know it kind of started during these times. Do you have a vision to like continue it and scale it for a while? And where do you see it going? Essentially.
Yeah, I mean, the 10,000 feet up vision is just centered on the fact that we grow enough food in the world to feed every single person, and yet food insecurity, which basically means if you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you're food insecure. There is a massive proportion of the world population who goes to bed hungry, faces starvation, faces food insecurity. So there are two, as I've harped on again and again, like there are two giant issues that could be used to solve each other. Uh, when when this food is being thrown out, it is not. I've seen it myself. It is not like just melon rinds and dinner plate leftovers and restaurant waste. In so many cases, billions of pounds of this is fresh produce that you would buy at Whole Foods. The same stuff, but it may have just had an expiration date one day sooner than what's on the shelves. So to answer your question, I mean, that is like if you would ask anyone at the organization, that's our main focus is just that understanding. And and that understanding that this isn't an issue that's just in California or in the United States. It's a global thing that's going on. And I would say all of us are committed to ensuring that we can expand this and kind of streamline our processes to make sure that we can fix this sustainably. Like we're set for 10, 15, 20 years from now. I mean, this quickly went from a project that we thought would end when we all went back to school in fall and to something that, it's kind of changed the course of my career plan and life.
Yeah. So you said you do see like yourself. You said it has kind of changed for you, your career plan in life.
Yeah, I think it's shaken a lot of things up quite rapidly for a lot of us. It has, yeah. Um, it has. I'm a senior. I'm graduating this May, and it, this is what I'm going to be doing.
Awesome. This might be kind of a hard question to answer, but maybe not. I'm just curious if you have any. I mean, it sounds like Farmlink is a very rewarding thing to start and to be a part of, and even the video, that. And I've looked at your guys' website, and there's just so many fun photos and videos of you guys all working together with farmers. Do you have any like stories that stick out to you that really just like illustrate what it's been like to be a part of this process? Like, I mean, it could be anything from like just an inspiring time, like talking to a farmer or just working with people.
Totally. I guess I have two. The first one was when I learned like how careful we have to be when we're dealing with this, like these amounts of food. In the beginning, I had like organized a shipment from Idaho, a bunch of potatoes to a food bank in LA, but I wasn't careful enough about like the way the basically the boxes need to be arranged within the truck. I kind of phoned it in, to be honest, and I was like, okay, it's coming. And so then I show up at the food bank for delivery, and the boxes had all been loaded in horizontally when they needed to be loaded vertically, which meant that the forklift couldn't get under, which meant that they couldn't get out, which meant that there was 40,000 pounds of potatoes stuck in a truck. And so we spent the next 10 hours digging all those 40,000 pounds of potatoes out with our hands, putting them into bags, walking them into the food bank. And it was nobody's fault but mine. So that happened early on, and we realized, okay, this is no joke. We may be doing this all from our phone and mostly over Zoom, but this is very, very real stuff. And that's why I always try to encourage everyone who's joining the project to go and volunteer and show up for delivery, because then you're going to understand like the scale of what it is you're doing. And the second story was we got a letter one day, a handwritten letter, and it basically said, "Hi, my name is Chloe. I am I'm 10 years old. I live in Washington and I sell peonies. I have a flower stand here in Washington. I read about your project and I felt that it would be, I felt that I shouldn't take all the money that I've made for myself. So here I'm donating all the money I've made, which is $984 to you. Signed, Farmer Hots and Plots is what she called herself." And we got this handwritten note from this 10-year-old girl with $984 that she had made herself over the summer, selling flowers outside of her house. And she decided that she had seen us, I think, on a news channel, and said, "I trust those guys, and I want to give them what I've made and what I've earned." And that made all of us like tear up, basically. I mean, like that's kind of, I think, representative of the trust that we have, and it taught us a lesson that we have now the trust of a lot of people from across the U.S. Every time someone gives us $1, they're trusting that we're going to do with it exactly as we say, that we're going to put that dollar towards helping get food into communities. So we actually went up and we had a Farmlink RV tour where we toured around and went to all the farms and food banks across the U.S. that we've worked with to meet these people. And we actually stopped in Washington to meet Chloe, and we had like a social distance hello, and it was awesome. But that's probably my favorite story from this whole experience.
I love that. That's a lot of money for a 10-year-old. That's really cool.
I know, it's more money than I made
That's
all
a lot
summer, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. So when did you started back in March?
We started April 15th.
Okay. April. And you started with the co-founder?
Yeah, it was myself and my friend James Knopf, who we grew up together, went to middle school together, volunteered at food banks together when we were younger. And then right off the bat, it was also Will and Ben Collier, who I go to Brown with. They live in Connecticut, but I just called Will just to chat and said, hey, by the way, I'm thinking about doing this thing, and we're getting it in motion. And he said, no way. Me and Ben and I were thinking about doing the same exact thing. Do you guys want to join efforts? So really from the get-go, it was the four of us after that first week of deliveries. And then, one by one, people started to add on. And I think we had something like 50 people then by this third week.
That's crazy. That's really, that's cool. Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to share about Farmlink or about your vision for Farmlink or any other fun takeaways or things you've learned that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, like I said, with Farmlink, we have a low barrier to entry. Like the whole key of what we're trying to do is say, you can help people even if you're not an expert in this, even if your resume doesn't have this, whatever. We want to make it accessible for someone who just has the extra time and cares to do something. And I think that started with like a simple mission and not this grand vision of trying to become something that was doing that was moving food across the US, but it was just a simple mission. And that's become something that's been inspiring for me for whatever it is I do years and years from now. It's that people can help, and these major issues like the supply chain and food insecurity in the US that just seem like the most untouchable things are actually something that you can attempt to fix. And that's what we're trying to do, is put a dent in that. So I guess I would say, as someone who has only been doing this for 6 months, and that you can put a dent in it. You just have to kind of start somewhere.
And what would like if somebody wanted to get involved with Farmlink, how would they do that? Like say there's a need, in an area that you guys aren't in yet. Is there a way that people could connect with you to kind of help expand into that area, or just help in other ways?
Absolutely. I mean, probably the best way would be going to our website, which is farmlinkproject.org. There you can see, you can sign up to volunteer full-time. You can sign up to do power hours, which are a couple hours a week of helping us contact farms. You can donate. You can read our stories and learn more about us. That's the best way. Otherwise, follow us on Instagram at Farmlink Project. And if you would like to just kind of chat or learn more about the project, then reach out to me. My email is aidan@farmlinkproject.org. Yeah, those are the best ways.
Excellent. And then what would you need in order to scale? Is there anything that you would like to put out there that you could use, whether that be connections or anything to kind of help you get to your next step?
Yeah. I think I would just keep it simple and say that just the trust and commitment of those people who are in not just the food space, but any space that wants to try to affect change, those are the most valuable to us. Those people who are not too stuck on the way things have been and instead want to look at the way things can be, the more connections we have to those types of organizations and people, the more we can continue to, I don't know, work on it together. So, yeah, I mean, th- that's all. The connections and trust and kind of commitment of those people who know so much more than we do and have been doing this so much longer than us show us how we can help you, basically.
Aidan, it's Shannon. I'm wondering, do you also accept $1 million checks, or is that just not on the list, or a little lower down? I have to say that on my worst day, and thank you so much because there's so much wisdom shared here. On my very worst day, I remind myself that the younger generations have all of the innovation, the capacity for creative thinking, the resourcing, the passion to solve every single one of the problems that we face. And this is just so inspiring. I'm so honored to hear both of you talk. And congratulations and well done. And I really cannot believe you did this all in 6 months. It's really something.
Yeah.
How are you, man? Are you okay, Aidan? Are you dehydrated?
No, I can't believe it either, but I can't really take any credit. It's 99.99% the insane team of people who joined us since the beginning. And I'm not trying to be overly humble. That's true.
Well, I appreciate that. I think that we can all take a page from that book. So I know, as you mentioned too, you mentioned this a little bit, and I know the two of you discussed it a bit as well, that this isn't a new problem, and there have been similar initiatives to try and combat this problem or provide a solution. But after this experience you've had in 6 months, are you feeling hopeful that this is something that we can actually kind of get our arms around finally?
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of people and organizations trying to work on this, and not trying to work on this competitively, but together, is super inspiring. That's been anywhere from huge organizations like food distribution organizations to small like Silicon Valley startups. There's a lot of there's a lot of respect between everyone who's trying to fix this problem right now, and there's a lot of people. So the commitment to working together is pretty awesome, and gives a lot of hope.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it seems like there's a lot to be learned here. Like, yes, about the food issue, but then also like how we work together, how we build networks across the country, how we reach out to people who we maybe wouldn't have been aware of or had a sense that they were out there doing this very same thing. So I love that this is like a more efficient way to try and get on top of this issue. I'm like, you said so many brilliant things. I was like, I got to remember and call that back. And then it was like 10 more things came on. So I'm so grateful for both of you. It's really quite inspiring. Do we have any questions from the audience through menti.com? I actually have a live question, but do we have any that would go up onto the screen, or am I allowed to take, and I can repeat what she says? I know, I'm going for it. Ma'am, in the front. Okay, Aidan, can you elaborate more what you've learned about what the root cause of this food issue is? Great question.
Yeah.
Expiration dates, right? Like improper planning, COVID,
During the pandemic, it was really the slashing of these major contracts. I mean, farmers have to plan seasons ahead of time. I mean, if you're supplying a large company with their apples and oranges for the fall, then you're going to have millions set aside or maybe frozen from the year before. And to then, to pay for refrigeration then when those contracts get canceled is far too expensive and not what they planned for. So it was most economically viable for them to dump it, basically, till it back into the field to use as fertilizer. Irrespective of the pandemic, it's a host of issues. It can be something as simple as there was better weather basically during a growing season, which then created 20% more crop than was expected. But that 20% more crop did not have viable buyers. So same issue, paying for refrigeration, not viable, so they dumped. Essentially, to oversimplify, what it comes down to is an issue of convenience for the farmer. And I want to be careful about saying that, but it's basically there aren't many or not enough simple, easy, and economically viable solutions for farmers to put their produce and their surplus that they inevitably have.
And I think that varies from state to state and from farm, like producer to producer. You're like a really small producer, you may not be able to get your crops to actual stores. And so what are you supposed to do when all of the farmers markets cancel or whatever that might be, right? It is quite complicated, I know.
It is, yeah.
But I really applaud you coming into something that you knew nothing about and just learning, very, very quickly adapting. And I'm so inspired to see where you're going to take this and what you're going to do with it. I wonder if I think we have time for one more question, if there's any on the screen or any in the house. Megan, how about you? Any final questions that you have burning?
I mean, I do I have one small question just based off of, kind of your last answer. When you said you cold called quite a few farmers just to see if they had any waste. Did you find that, first of all, how many did you cold call, and are you still cold calling them? And out of all the people you've called, did you find that most of the farmers had waste? Yeah,
in the beginning we called like hundreds and hundreds of farmers, and we got hung up on a lot because we didn't even have a name yet. It was very awkward. If we finally did get a farmer on the phone, I tried to explain I'm a student and I want your potatoes, and the guys they're usually just creeped out. Eventually, once we kind of hit a couple and farmers who trusted us basically, and we were able to move some food, then we made a name and a website, and then farmers are very kind of and I don't mean to generalize, but from speaking to thousands over the last couple months, I know that farmers are very trust-based and relationship-based, and very word of mouth as well. So it snowballed once we started making more connections because they had heard from their friend, or they had heard just through the general community. And but in the beginning, we probably called 400 farms before we got someone to actually really pick up and trust us.
Wow.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's incredible that you called 400 and then just kept kind of being persistent about it.
I know the tenacity is impressive, right?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it takes, that's how you got to do it though when you're starting. That's awesome.
I know. I really applaud you. Okay, so we have one final question from the audience. What are you going to be when you grow up?
That's a really good question. I'm just trying to graduate at this point, but like I kind of touched on, I have no idea. But throughout this process, I've kind of stumbled upon something that feels of massive personal importance to me, and whether it's through Farmlink or whether it's through another outlet in the future, I think these issues, the fact that they can solve each other, putting your mind towards that and your energy towards helping the two solve each other is, I think it kind of has me hooked. So I think I'm in this space for a long haul.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for what you're doing. And I hope that you'll go back to your entire team and share our thanks as well, because there's a lot to be learned here, and it's just so impressive, and we're cheering for you from here.
I absolutely will. Thank you, guys.
Please stay in touch, Aidan. And thank you to our Megan for joining us. Megan, it's always wonderful to have you here. Great to
be
see you
here.
again.
Thank you.